What is up guys, this is Nick from That's Student Life Australia, and today we're going to be talking about how to make university notes and how it's actually different from making notes that you're probably used to making in high school. So, let's jump right into it. Okay, so most of the stuff in this video is going to be based off my personal experience. I go to the University of Newcastle, Australia, and I'm going to be contrasting that with my HSC experience. For the HSC, I was a very big fan of handwriting notes because I believe that you had to think about what you were writing down a little bit longer and therefore you would retain that knowledge a little bit better. And that worked for the most part during the HSC. Super successful, like an ATAR of 97.55. Happy days, like, you know, it worked really well for me. And then I tried to take that success from high school and do the exact same thing at university. And it worked for a little bit and then it blew up. Like, it just didn't work. You can't hand write all of your university notes. And that's something that I tried to do. Let me go and find where my university notes are. Those are kind of my university notes, which I just like handwrote in books and sort of kept in folders. But like, this is biology, for example. They're all kind of that detailed and, you know, all these kind of complex diagrams and stuff to draw, all that good stuff. But this is the one thing that makes making university notes different from making regular notes in the HSC. So let's look at this first of all. We have specificity of the information that you need to give on a test. For the HSC, absolute 10 out of 10. Whereas for university, we're looking at somewhere in between like 7 and 8. And you know, in the HSC, you can get super specific questions like tailored to a tiny part of the syllabus, whereas university, they tend to ask you more general questions. They just want to know if you know the information. They're not worried about asking the same question again, like the HSC seems to be. So, in terms of the notes that you make, you don't have to be ultra specific in what you take down and what you write on an exam, which is a big plus of university. So as a result, when you make your notes, you can make them a little bit more generalized. You don't have to worry too much about answering specific verbs. But yeah, as long as you've got the content there, you should be sweet. The trade-off for that is the workload in a content to time ratio for the HSC would be somewhere around 10, whereas university would be somewhere around 100. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is that you have lots and lots of content for the HSC, but you do have about a year or 3 terms or whatever to learn it. For university, you're pretty much doing double that content in a quarter of the time, which makes it very difficult and can feel like you have lots and lots of stuff to learn. But handwriting these notes, if you're doing that much note taking, it's just not possible. Like, it's possible, but your quality of life is rubbish. You're just spending your entire life handwriting these notes. This is exactly what I did for the first 6 weeks of uni before I pretty much exploded. Like, I had to take a break. I had to take some time off just for a few days or so and just do nothing because I was just exhausted. But we dive into talking about how I ended up making my notes for university post week 6, in which I stopped trying to do university like I did the HSC, because they're not the same thing. First of all, make sure you go to the lecture or watch the lecture online, whatever resource is readily available to you. It's important that you go to that and not just go through the lecture slides. Often lecturers like to get lazy, they just put images or diagrams and stuff in and they explain those in the lecture, and they're absolutely worthless to you if you're not present in the lecture. So yeah, make sure you go to the lecture, which brings me on to my second point. Make sure you read the textbook that they give you. Don't be the hero who says, I don't need a textbook. It does help you even if you only use it just a tiny bit. So yeah, I use this my chemistry textbook. I read the corresponding chapter after I go to the lecture, and then once I've gone through the lecture notes, course notes if I've got any, and read the information, then I have enough in my head to go and make some comprehensive notes. Now, because you don't have like a direct syllabus like you used to have in the HSC, you have to be a little bit clever in how you make your notes. So for the HSC, I was very used to having a dot point in which I could look at and then just write the corresponding information down. Like, the syllabus is pretty much in the HSC, like recipes for success. You read it, tells you what you need to know, and you learn it. University is a little bit more blasé. They don't tend to tell you that specific information. So what I actually ended up doing was using the subchapters in the textbook, such as this is in my very large biology textbook. Anyway, that one down the bottom there, it's not going to focus, says what do carbohydrates do? Just simple stuff like that that the textbook covers. If you have to read that part of the textbook, why not sort of steal the heading? And that way, if you can just make little subheadings analogous to HSC dot points, that it sort of breaks up the information, it's a lot easier to learn. So when you're studying, you say, I'm going to do this dot point, this dot point slash section, this one, and this one tonight, and then I can go to bed. So it just makes your study a little bit more succinct and easier. So yeah, this is like kind of the end result. There's some biology notes that I made. Lots of information and stuff I went through and highlighted at the end just to read through them again when I was studying. Best thing about doing it on the computer is you can kind of copy and paste tables and stuff, stuff that are impossibly long to write out, but you'd like to have in your notes just as a reference, and have to keep everything separate. Yeah, so that's my spin on university notes. It's very different from the HSC. You can't just handwrite everything, it's not going to work. Make sure you're using a computer to type, it's just going to save you some time. Make sure you're reading the textbook, going to your lectures and using the lecture notes, and your notes should be a synthesis of all of those. Don't go crazy with the length. You don't want to be making a second version of your textbook. In terms of the amount of things that you have to know in the very short period of time, it's imperative that use your time wisely, use your computer, and use all the resources at your disposal. Sort of sequence of events that you need to follow in order to make good university notes. It should look a little something like this. So you want to go to your lecture, and then you want to read your textbook notes or course notes, and then you want to break that information into its appropriate subheadings to make it easier for when you're studying, and then finally write your notes, type them. I recommend to save time, and your notes should be a synthesis of the textbook and the lecture notes, because the textbook will miss something, the lecturer will miss something. That way, if you blend them both together, you've covered all of the information. This worked pretty well for me during my last semester of university. I got all high distinctions. My lowest mark was 91 and my highest mark was 95. So use this method, guys. I think it works, and I strongly recommend that you steer away from what you did for the HSC, because it's a completely different ballgame. Thanks for watching, guys. Cheers.